Hey guys, happy Monday and welcome back. Boy, are we going through a bunch of dire news left and right. I hope that those of you who find it difficult to go through this time find my videos helpful. I know that many of you do because you either comment or you message, and I totally appreciate it. All I can do is to speak to how to prepare ourselves, not only physically but from the non-physical point of view, more specifically, as you already know, EMFs and brain and cellular frequencies, based on what I have learned and experimented in the lab, as well as what I have also learned and experimented throughout life, because I know the difference. As long as we don't learn or become more aware of how to work with our non-physical bodies, in this case electromagnetic waves, brain frequencies, cellular frequencies, organs frequencies, it's going to be a very bumpy ride. This life, 2020 forward, but even before that, I think 2020 made it much clearer to us as to what happens if we are not in a position to sort of work with what we have. Again, in terms of the non-physical, once all the safety is taken away from us. I know of some people who are going through it very smoothly and some people less smoothly. Nonetheless, it's our job to learn how to work with. And the best way to work with our EMFs, with our brain and cellular frequencies, is to not only become aware of it, but to be proactive in terms of what frequencies do we want to be in. Whether we believe it or not, whether we like it or not, it does have a direct impact and influence on the physical body. And once we start working on it and become better at it on a daily basis, we will notice that gradually even our physical body starts following suit. This is not anything mumbo jumbo. It is scientific. I have seen it in my lab, looked at patterns in the lab, not only me, along with other scientists. And so it is nothing, it's not something that we make up. It's not you know how sometimes people become very suspicious. I get that. It's great to question everything, and we should. But there are certain things that once we prove it enough of a long time, and also we do it, we test it out for ourselves, and then we start seeing results, then there is no denying in that whatever the rest of the world may say. And that has direct correlation between your non-physical body with your physical body that basically trumps your life as a whole. To that end, I want to bring up one of the best advice I ever read, and how it has basically more or less made me set and align my life to an extent that it started permeating the rest of my life. I have no medical background, and whatever I say is based on my own experience in lab, where I measured and looked at brain frequencies during the course of knowledge seeking of human beings. And so whatever I say, if you have any medical condition, mental condition, this is not for you. This is just the experience that I have seen and done in lab that I'm sharing now with everybody. And Bliss is one of them. The first time I ever read that those 3 words, follow your bliss, I didn't even know what bliss meant. So I had to look it up. But it although I didn't know the meaning, it spoke to me, and I had a gut feeling about it that this is going to be a great advice, because my personal thing is that I always look for the easiest, quickest advice that it's simple enough so that I can follow. And follow your bliss was one of them. And so I started understanding it, trying it, and also, but most importantly, I try to define it in my own life. Like, what would a bliss look like in my life? Also, another thing that I tried was to really make it like small steps that are tangible, nothing big, because if it were too big, it would not fit into my mind. And so the way I started to define it was to first and foremost see what is it that brings bliss into my life. And I started taking notes, and I started thinking, okay, these are the things that bring bliss into my life, and they're small enough so that I can feel that they're tangible and that I can do something with it, or at least I can relate to them. One of them, for example, again, very stupid example, I'm bringing in very stupid small examples so that it becomes very tangible. One of them, for example, was drinking coffee. I really like coffee, especially if they're specific blends and they're organic and all those good stuff. And I like making my own coffees. I don't like paying $5 for a coffee that somebody else is making, because I make them with love. And so it really tastes good. And that moment of drinking that coffee, and that is how the list of bliss started, with something small, and then I went into something bigger and bigger. And when I did the list, I realized that there are certain things that when I do them, it immediately changed my state of being. One of them was actually reading science paper. Now, you may not like it, you may find your own thing, but for me, every time I read a science paper, even if it was like an abstract of a science, because it has something to do with knowledge seeking, I loved it, and it would change my frequencies immediately, and I could feel it right away. I could go from a moment of being extremely depressed, and after just reading like one paragraph of abstract of a scientific paper that I was interested in, immediately it shifted my emotions, my stance, my whole being, basically. And it could happen within a couple of minutes. And again, that is something that I discovered that was working for me. Every person has their own thing that they should discover. Once you discover that, you can latch on it and work the hell out of it, because you can repeat it over and over and over again, so that it helps you to gradually, step by step, change your frequencies. And so I started doing it. I kept doing it. Every time there was something, I would go and just search for something, and I would read a paper, for example. And at the end, what it did for me was that it gradually, step by step, every day, it took me away from those issues that I was going through. And at that point in time, that issue for me was pretty big, and there was a decision I had to make, and I couldn't. And it was a very emotional decision. And it also included a couple of people whom I was very emotionally attached to. And for me, being able to take these steps shifted everything. Like, even if it was for an hour a day that it shifted my stance, it still was something great that I could latch on to. And as a result, gradually, it just shifted everything. And I was able to, towards the end, see things very clearly. And eventually, I made that decision. And it was one of the best decisions in my life. But it was thanks to changing. So what I'm trying to say is that at any point in time, no matter what you're going through, you have the power to change your brain and cellular frequencies. All you need to do is find that one little thing that brings bliss into your moment. Doesn't need to be something great. If you want to become a millionaire, that's great, but maybe you don't want to use it right now because it's not very believable for you. But if you, let's say, just identify one little thing, in this case for me was reading very quick scientific papers. If you identify what works for you, you're able to switch your frequencies even just a little bit at that particular point in time. And if you do that long enough, gradually it'll change and permeate the rest of your body and cellular frequencies, and you will notice it in the long run as a great result. And so to me, the frequencies of bliss were really, really interesting, and part of the patterns of brain activities, in this case EEG, that I was able to also detect and discover when I was in lab was the moment of bliss where the subjects that were in my lab, there was a moment once they found the knowledge that they were seeking for, there was a moment of bliss, and I was able to also measure those brain activities, and I was able to create a pattern of it. Some of them were gamma waves, but some of them could also go all the way to alpha waves. It really was dependent on the person. Nonetheless, what I'm trying to say is that a bliss does have brain and cellular frequencies that will gradually take you out of the dire situation that you may be in right now. And so if you don't have any medical conditions, the best thing that you can do starting today, starting right now, is to start thinking about what is it that brings bliss into your moments. And something very small. I mentioned one small example for myself. In this case, it was coffee. I also mentioned something that was bigger in my life. So yours is very different, but the best gift that you can give yourself today is to discover that little thing that brings bliss into your moments, write it down, and then every day promise yourself, give yourself that commitment to do that, whatever that thing is, or to think that, whatever that thing is. And I promise you, you will start noticing difference on a daily basis. Look, we're being bombarded by dire news left and right, day and night. That's okay, but there's only so many days and so many moments that we can go and just being bombarded by that before our physical body starts reacting. And a reaction could be that, God forbid, we get sick, or we make bad choices, or we make things worse than it is for ourselves. And so those little gifts that I was just talking about is the least that we can give ourselves on a daily basis. Because if you weigh in the amount of information, dire information that we receive on a daily basis, weigh that in with the hopeful thoughts that we have on a daily basis, the other one weighs much more. And think of what it could potentially do to our bodies and our psyche and our lives in general if we just keep letting it happen. And so these moments of bliss will be the moments that will gradually help you and kind of save you, so that you can gradually build up your life towards something that is positive and constructive for you. Because in the long run, if we keep letting this happen on a daily basis, the outcome won't be what we desire. So unless that is something that we want, then we can continue with it. But the way I see it, I'm much more useful to the community and to my family if I keep committing to my psyche, to health of my physique, to health of my emotions, to health of my psyche. is one way you can help align and gather your frequencies. Other ways is to also use your other senses. One of them we've already talked about is the auditory. If you want, listen to the soundtracks that I have composed, because every single one of them are composed so that it aligns the frequencies. And this could be one of the things you do on a daily basis. Just listen to the track once, for example, to put you in that positive and constructive frequencies. And then, for example, you can come up with your own bliss, because these soundtracks are meant to put you in a situation and put you in a stance so that you are positive and healthy in terms of frequency enough so that you can take a positive action. And in this case, it would be one positive action would be for you to discover what your bliss is, write it down, and then do it. So you see how it goes? It's like a snow. Another way is to use the five senses is, for example, also visually. Making sure that you on a daily basis see something or look at something that is hopeful to you, beautiful to your eyes on a daily basis. For example, nature is perfect. Be making sure that we look at something from nature and just at that moment not think about anything else, but let that connection of frequencies between you and, let's say, a tree or a little plant, let that communication be just that for the moment, and you will immediately notice that the frequencies of that plant or that piece of nature will also permeate your own frequencies. And these are the things that we can do on a daily basis, and that could be your bliss. So that's all I had for today. I really wanted to talk about bliss because I followed my own bliss for many years despite what everybody else told me. And I'm not a millionaire yet, but in terms of comparing to the level of content and satisfaction that I feel in my life today in comparison to 10 years ago, it's just not even comparable. You can't even compare it. And that's just because I stopped following every other people's bliss, and I started following my own. It took many years because I was a person who was too faithful to everything and everybody else. But then after a while, I realized that that was not something that it was just me doing it for them. And so one day I just got up and I'm like, this is not fucking fair. So let me change that. And it's not easy, but there is a way to balance all that, and the final outcome is much better because it just creates a much more life of content that helps us, and then in turn it helps also the community at the end. But yeah, it is a weird world, and we just have to learn how to make the best out of it. I'm hopeful. I believe in humanity. I believe in cellular and brain frequencies, and that's another reason I'm doing these videos, and I hope these are helpful to you. Share the video if you like, and I'll see